Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of the Good Up podcast. I am your favorite Aries. And I'm joined by your favorite Aquarius.
The only Aquarius.
Period.
But I'm also Hayes' curls because I wish those of you who have not paid the dollar could see her curls right now. So this week I'm
We
Hayes'
haven't.
curls. I'm Hayes' curls.
We love to see it.
Yes.
Welcome back to another episode. We're so happy for you guys to be back. It's been a good season so far. I know that we are recording sort of on a different timeline than y'all are actually hearing it. So again,
Yeah.
I just want to thank Ayo for the amazing welcome back. It's been great. Like
Yeah,
y'all have been
seriously.
amazing. You've been so engaged with the pages. We've been posting a lot of fun content. So yeah, we fucking love to see it. Shout out to everybody in the VIP section, aka the Patreon. They have been excited to be back. I've been getting some messages from the patrons. Yeah, shout out to our sponsors. Again, I gotta say, y'all have heard very lengthy ads at the beginning of the episodes, and you're gonna hear ads for the
In
rest of
the
the
middle
season
and
because
at
the
the
bills
end.
getting paid. And that's thanks to the Virgin Islands Lottery, Empath Psychological Services, the Blend Collective, and Greater Changes. Thank
Hey,
you.
we really appreciate you guys. Thank you for keeping the lights on and elevating our recording spaces.
Yes. So yeah, this week, y'all know we start the episode off with one of two segments. The first segment coming up is people being good up, aka spotted being good up. Deidre, do you have someone for your spotted being good up this week?
Actually, I do. Shout out to my notes app. Okay. I don't know the actual individual, but what they've done is very impactful in certain places. And so I wanted to share it with our community and hope that maybe business owners in our community can adopt this practice. I came across a Facebook post maybe like a day or two ago, and somebody told like this story about how they were like at a coffee shop and certain patrons who were regulars would come in and buy their coffee. Like for instance, let's say I come in and I order like three coffees and I say like one is for me and two is hanging. Basically the two that are hanging are intended to be prepaid coffee beverages or whatever hot beverage or whatever beverage period, so that if somebody who is like who's suffering from homelessness or just somebody who don't have money needs a hot drink or something like that, they could get it for free, basically. Um, and so I was
Oh,
like, whoever came up with that, at least at that particular place, is who I caught being good up. I don't know who it is, but I think it's a really dope practice. It's a good way to pay it forward. And it's also like I believe that the truest form of giving is anonymous to anonymous, right? And so literally what they do is like different restaurants would have that practice where people could come in, they'll order their stuff, and then the hanging ones, it's pretty much the receipt
it's
and
like a
it's hanging.
prepaid meal.
It's a prepaid meal,
Yeah.
but it's called hanging because the receipt of whatever was paid for will be hanging on like a bulletin board. And so if you come
Mhm.
in on the bulletin board, it literally says like, if you're hungry and have no money, just grab one of these receipts, bring it to the counter, and then the thing is they make the food when the receipts are turned in so that the person gets a hot meal or a hot drink or whatever the case may be. I think it's really cool. I know for certain whenever I own my like restaurant or a diner or cafe or whatever it is, because I know at some point, maybe when I'm like retired and, have money to play with, I'm certain I'm going to own a food and beverage establishment of some kind. I'm absolutely going to have something like that. And I hope food and beverage, businesses back home think about adopting something like that. I know when I used to live in Jersey City, we had the light rail, which was like, it's kind of like a bus slash train kind of vibe. But before they started doing digital tickets, they used to have these like physical tickets that you had to like stamp, and the ticket would be valid for like an hour. But if you were only going for like one or two stops, here you have a ticket that's valid that you might have just thrown in the trash. So it's customary in Jersey City and Hoboken for people to just like, at least before they did digital tickets, to just give away their validated tickets. So what we used to do is when we get to our stop, we would stick our ticket where the stamp machine is, and the
Oh,
stamp would be visible. So like what's the point in me stamping a ticket that's good for an hour? I only use it for like 5 minutes. somebody else could just use that same ticket. So a lot of us would go and we would just like kind of chuck our little ticket where people would be stamping it. So, and
Listen,
anybody,
people in New Jersey and New York express like this level of solidarity, especially when it comes to the transit system.
oh,
I
we
would be
don't play
like,
about the
man,
transit
fuck
system.
these people.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, we don't fucking play. One thing about it, baby, especially in like New York, if I see somebody jump in the turnstile, I'm looking the other way. The fuck? Like, so yeah, so that's who I caught being good up. I don't know who created that system, at least in I think it's in Naples. I don't know who created it, but whoever did create it, that's who got caught being good up. And I hope our community adopts it in some fashion.
Period.
Did you catch anybody being good up?
I am going to take this moment to talk about my man, because he was spotted being good up, within the last couple of days. I think I told you, Dredas, over the phone. I don't always
Oh, you
try to
did?
remember, like, did I tell you
Ah!
on the phone or did I tell you on a podcast?
No, you told me on the phone. We were talking about it and we were being such girls about it. I loved it.
Yeah, what you call it? I basically, y'all know I am a reader. I am a reading ass girl. And one of my favorite authors is Beverly Jenkins. She is an OG 90s like romance writer. She's still a very active writer now. Beverly Jenkins romance book that came out in the 90s, or romance books that came out in the 90s. It's very rare to find the original covers of those books. Obviously books get reprinted, covers go I guess like out of circulation, shit like that. So she has one book in particular, Indigo, that is really rare to try to find, and I was talking to my husband about it and telling him like I would die essentially if I got this book. But also because this author happens to be coming into town next week for the Tucson Festival of Books, which I'm working. I'm moderating a panel which she's going to be on. So like I already excited that I get to meet her, but I was like, imagine if I found this very rare book and she signed it and I had this book in my possession. So
That's fire.
we've been, sitting there fucking around looking for the book. We not only found the book, but we found a first edition of the book, which again is
I think it's crazy that
like,
you're saying we when Steven is who find it.
I mean, we were in the bed to get out, but he did find it. So,
Okay.
um, and yeah, my man got me the book, and the book it is somewhere on the shelf behind me right now, but I live in, okay? And the girls who understand, they understand. But just to put it this way, like money was spent just to make sure that I was able to have this experience because,
Yes.
he realizes that that brings me joy. So that's why I started being good up
You go,
all the time,
Steven.
but
You
also
go,
this
Glen
week,
Coco.
and yeah, just reminded Ayo that when I come out here and I say my man, I have reasons. So
Yeah. No, she really do. Like,
yeah,
come
I
on
feel
now.
blessed.
You
So
are
yeah, that's
blessed.
the person that I spotted being good up this week. But I did really like yours because I enjoy when people pay it forward just in any way. I think that the one thing that's really, really missing from the wall right now, and it gonna sound so cheesy and so simple, but like kindness. Kindness is not
It goes a
a
long way.
huge part of our culture. So when people go out of their way to express kindness, I don't feel super proud because I try to do that in my own life all the time. And I feel
Yeah.
like enough people aren't kind. Like
Yeah. It's
people are
true.
just mean for no fucking reason half the time. So
Bruh, no, like legit, I've never understood like that desire to just be fucking mean, you know? And
yeah.
every time I think of times that people have been kind to me, I just stick it in my back pocket so I could do the same for others.
Yep.
Because I just remember how it made me feel. You know, I'll never forget one time Dylan was like 1 or 2, and we still lived in St. Croix at the time. And I remember him and I were in Kmart, like running errands, and I had like a couple things in my cart. And it's not like I couldn't pay for the things or anything, but the lady in front of me just paid for my shit. Like, actually, she was behind me. And I don't know why. You know, like I, it wasn't like I was in a situation where I couldn't afford to pay for my things or whatever, but
Hmm.
maybe it was because the kid is super cute. Who knows? But I just know this lady behind me. She was like an older lady, like middle-aged-ish. She was probably like in her mid 40s. And so I put my things on the thing. The girl rang it up, and just while I was like in my purse grabbing my wallet, she was like, "Miss, I'm gonna just pay for her stuff. Just combine it with mine." I was like, you don't have to do that, miss. And she was like, no, I want to. And I was like, okay, thank you.
Yeah,
And I've
I'd have been like,
never
thanks, thanks.
forgotten.
Don't even
No,
question it.
it
Thanks.
was so, I was like, are you okay? I don't know
Yeah.
this lady from a can of paint. I barely even remember what she looks like, but it was just so sweet and thoughtful. And I was like, wow, I actually really like that. And it's always been on my mind. And I'm like,
Hmm.
any little chance I get to do things like that for others, I try to take it because it's
Yeah.
just special. It's nice,
It's
you know?
so
Like,
and it's so impactful for people because you just never know what somebody going through. Even if they
facts.
they may not necessarily have been experiencing a financial challenge. Sometimes like somebody will having a really bad fucking day and you do
Hmm.
something nice for them and it makes them remember that like, okay, there are good
There are
people in the
good
world
people in
and
the
like it's
world.
like you just never know. So shout out to
Facts.
all of y'all who are out here performing random acts of kindness just
Yeah.
because we need people like you.
Yeah.
Um and the opposite end of that, well, not the opposite end of that, but I just gain I already because sometimes when we don't choose the hills we gonna die on, I don't be in here like fuck you and I understand.
Yeah. The hill
But
I'm finna die on gonna piss some people off. You could go first if you want, though.
well, mine is plain and simple. I am wearing the shirt. I don't know if I go well the VIP section could see this shirt, but
Mm-hmm.
this is the hill
Oh,
that I am dying on.
yeah, period.
And for those of you
Actually,
who
send me the link to that shot so I could get one, please.
I will. And for those of you who
Thanks.
can't see it, my shirt says Free Palestine. And it's from the river to the motherfucking sea in here, okay?
Yeah.
The hill that I am dying on, Tore tomorrow next week, and until they free Palestine, it's free Palestine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't really have much else to say about it. If you have no idea what's happening in Gaza, you need to figure out what's happening in Gaza. If you don't feel like you're educated enough to speak, Google is free. You need to educate yourself.
Yeah.
Um, there are people in Gaza, in Sudan, in all these places around the wall, in the Congo, that are being treated horribly by people in
Yeah.
power. And 9 times out of 10, if you do your research and you look into this, our wonderful quote unquote country is responsible for so much harm that is coming to various communities around the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't do something about it, they're going to keep assuming that they can get away with it. So
Yeah.
doing something about it is as simple as making sure that people don't continue to bypass the conversation. You can convince yourself that social media isn't important and talking about it online don't do anything. But the only reason half of us know or all of us know what is happening in Gaza right now, what's happening in the Congo, what's happening in Sudan and everywhere else is because of people on the internet. So my challenge to Ayo this week is if you don't know what's going on and you haven't been saying anything about what's going on, then say something about what's going on.
Yeah.
But Allah to say, I dying on a hill. If you feel differently about what happening, I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't care. I don't
Honestly,
care.
if you're listening to this podcast and you feel differently about it, I
Yeah, you
think
shouldn't be
this is not the
surprised.
show for you.
You
I
shouldn't be
think,
surprised.
yeah, I feel like if you feel differently about, the simple free Palestine, baby, then I think you should just go ahead and unsubscribe. We actually don't want your
Yeah,
money if you feel differently. Like, your money's no good
yeah,
over here. Your patron, you're like your listenership, none of that. If you
yeah.
disagree, baby,
And that's fine. That's fine. You could go how you going. But
yeah,
as for me and my house and this podcast, it's free Palestine
yeah,
until it's
forever.
backwards, okay?
Yeah,
Because being good up means that you recognize that there are people in this world who have less resources, less
yes,
privilege, less power. And if you are a good up person, you recognize that you might be in a position of privilege and power, and you
yeah.
fighting for those who don't have the same as you. So
Facts. Yeah.
don't be fucking ashy. Free fucking Palestine. Anyway, what's
Period.
the hell you dying on this week?
I don't know. I'm contemplating just saving it for next week, but I think I'll go ahead and say just go ahead and break up with the person you made a baby with. Just go ahead and break up with them. Do not those children are not a good enough reason for you to stay with that person. The children want you to get a divorce or break up.
Are you saying like if the relationship is not
Oh,
a good
obviously, like
relationship?
I'm not,
Okay.
first of all, if I have to explain that I'm talking about a toxic relationship, girl, fuck you. Um, if you and the person that or people, I don't know y'all life, if you and whomever you've made children with are on terrible terms, if you guys are not getting along, if somebody is abusive, if it's like a very tumultuous relationship and you're staying together because y'all share a child or children, just break up. The children want you to break up. The fucking dog and cat want you to break up. It's
Your
better.
neighbor. The man down the street.
Especially the man down the street, child.
You deep down, you know.
The reality is the children are better off with parents who split up and heal on their own and eventually are able to get along. And if you guys are never able to get along, that's okay too. But a child is better off with one healthy parent who has the capacity to raise them than two people who hate each other, who are so consumed in their fight that the children are going ignored. And everybody I know whose parents stayed together for the children, them children was like, I wish those motherfuckers got divorced. I wish those motherfuckers broke up. So I'm here to say,
the first article that I've ever had published was me writing about how much of a blessing my parents' divorce was.
Wow. Period. It's giving alignment. Baby, break the fuck up. Let me tell you something. Just break up. Just break up. Just fucking break up.
Just break up. Stop valuing longevity in relationships versus healthy relationships.
You know what's
Stop
staying
valuing status over your happiness. You look dumb.
You look dumb. And them children is struggling and everybody's eczema is acting a fool and everybody's nervous system is a fucking mess. You got inflammation in your motherfucking gut because your cortisol levels is high and so is the children's. They probably constipated too. Everybody's so fucking stressed. But you know, like those, okay, a good example of holding on to relationships like that is somebody who has long hair, but the hair has a lot of like heat damage and like friction damage and they don't have edges. It's like, girl, just chop it off and start over.
Like you fighting for that ponytail, but that ponytail looks crazy. Let
the ponytail,
it go.
Like you put the ponytail up, right? And it's long, but it's super thin and you could see.
You probably would be sexy as fuck with a pixie cut.
With a fucking pixie cut. And on top, it's one thing if you got long hair and it's full and you don't have edges. You know, you could grow your edges back with some effort, right? You have long hair that's broken and you don't have edges. That's what that relationship is. What are you doing? Break up. And then you break up, right? You take the time, you focus on you get better. You guys just put the children first, prioritize them children, right? You make a promise to yourself, to that person, and to them babies to do right by the children. And then before you know it, time has gone by, right? And you've put in the effort and the work to get better on your own. And that person has put in the effort and the work to get better on their own, right? Now this child has two happy homes. You don't have to see that little motherfucker all the time, right? You could send them to the other parent or by your aunt, whatever. But then guess what? You have room in your life for somebody that you're more compatible with, right? And get this, that person loves you and your child or children the same as though the children is theirs. And then your ex does the same. They find somebody else. Now that child has 4 fucking parents that loves them. Bitch. Yeah. And let me tell you something. I had my little stepmother phase. It was an inappropriate relationship, but I loved being a stepmom when I was a stepmom. It was the best. It was so fun. It was a lot of fun. Step parents actually love being step parents. Because you just get like this instant child that you just fucking love. You just can't help but to love the motherfucker. And then like, it's not your child, but it is your child, right? So you get to love on this child. And then when it comes down to the serious shit, you'd be like, you got other parents that can handle that. Break up. Everybody's gonna be happy.
And just please know, as a child of divorce, your children, you're gonna be like, oh, but what about the kids? Your kids sitting up in their bed at night like, yo, I just want mommy to get rid of this motherfucker. Like, I just whispering at night, praying for your marriage's downfall. And you sitting here talking about, but what about the kid? The kids are miserable.
Or even like wanting dad to fucking get rid of mom because mom might be the crazy one. Regardless, there's just fucking break up. The children will be fine. The children are over here. The children, right, are jealous of their friend who goes to their dad's house every other weekend or whatever. Period. The children are like, I wish I could just like have 2 houses. You know, just do it. You know, just girl, just do it.
You're so fucking funny.
I don't know who that's for, but that's the hill I'm dying on. Just
somebody driving to work, just get done arguing with a man about not taking the garbage out, and we come on the speaker like, girl, break up.
Fuck. And let me tell you something. If you listening to this right now, in this very moment, and this was for you,
divine intervention, but
DM me. Don't worry about a podcast page. DM me directly. You could DM me with this. Send me a butterfly and a hibiscus emoji. You don't even got to say words, baby. You DM me with those specific emojis.
You better remember too, because imagine it DM you And it's weeks later, you like, bitch, why the fuck you said it? Ooh, but yeah, DM Deidre.
Dear me.
I stopped looking dumb. Thanks. That's our message for the week. That's actually a very great hill to die on. Break up.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, let's get into the episode then. This week, we are talking about emotional unavailability. Speaking of people you need to fucking break up with, um,
That
I've been with
emotionally unavailable motherfucker who bamboozled you into a marriage. Who
right,
he just wanted a fucking servant to replace his mama.
right. So anyway, so for those of
I'm
you who
sorry.
don't know what emotional unavailability is, being emotionally unavailable describes the inability to sustain emotional bonds in relationships. Since it's difficult to have a healthy relationship without an emotional connection, people who are emotionally unavailable tend to find relationships challenging. Think about that person who constantly breaking up with people, who is constantly going from this isn't every emotionally unavailable person. This is just an example.
No, I think it's crazy that you saying that when I just come from preaching about breaking up.
Who is constantly bouncing from relate. No, but I think there's a difference between that and between choosing to end an unhealthy relationship.
Okay.
I
Okay. Cool.
think
Cool.
when someone is emotionally unavailable, they tend to end up people who are emotionally unavailable and don't realize it tend to put themselves in relationships knowing that they don't have the capacity to really be connected to the person in a relationship.
Oh, so my ex, who I just
They
drugged last
just
week.
yeah, they're just kind of going through the gigs. They're benefiting from maybe the sexual connection or the fun of it, but they lack depth. They lack the ability to really emotionally connect. They might also be ashy if we talking about your ex specifically.
And
So
short.
short. So we have some examples of what that could look like in dating. If you are dating someone who's emotionally unavailable, they tend to not like making plans. They tend to call the shots in terms of how far the relationship goes. You do all of the like emotional work in the relationship. Typically, they avoid the word relationship. So 9 times out of 10, in the past, when we've talked about things like breadcrumbing, when we've talked about people who string you along, those people 9 times out of 10 are emotionally unavailable. They reflect your feelings instead of offering their own. So when you are head over heels for somebody, you'll notice that if they're emotionally unavailable, they tend to be like, they just go along with the big feelings that you're having versus actually telling you what they're feeling. They show up later, blow off plans, and you never seem to grow closer. That's just for dating. That's just for
Okay,
dating.
because I'm like, I don't know. I don't think my ex covers much of that, but
Yeah.
he
Which
still was.
it
He
don't
was still
have to cover
trifling.
all of it.
Yeah, he don't. He didn't cover much of that, to be honest. But he's still trifling.
It's still trifling. And then for example, parents can also be emotionally unavailable. So a parent who like lacks the ability to mirror with their child. So for example, their child is sad and they can like kind of get on to level with their child and be like, oh, why are you feeling sad, boo? They're kind of like, okay, whatever. That might be a sign of emotionally unavailable parenting. They respond to their children's emotions with impatience or indifference. They avoid or prevent discussion of negative emotions. They're dismissive or overwhelmed when their child has an emotional need. So everything is very specific to connecting on an emotional level, right? It's that inability to really open space for somebody else's emotions in relation to you. So I hope that makes sense. So with all
So
that being said, go ahead.
would a good example of that be those motherfuckers asking us if we wanted a reason to cry?
Yes.
Okay. Because as
I
soon as you
think
started describing that, the first thing I heard was, "Don't give me. Do I need to give you a reason, something to cry about?" I feel like
yeah.
something like that is what my mom used to say
I
when I was
think
crying.
I think Caribbean parents, Black parents. I mean, let me not even because I now that I
No, white
have
people be
white
beating their
friends,
children's ass too. No, white people be
yeah,
fucking their kids up
yeah.
too.
I I will say I think it's a generational thing. Let me not make it
Yes.
racial. I think for a lot of us in the millennial and Gen Z generations and Gen X, because Gen X were raised by boomers
Yeah,
also.
the boomers really, got the ball rolling on this shit.
Yeah.
And yeah, the boom.
So a lot of that type of
Yeah.
parenting was emotionally unavailable because for
Yeah.
them it was more about your upbringing and making sure you had like your physiological needs, so
Yeah.
shelter, food, all of that, and not so much about your emotional
Yeah.
well-being. So
Yeah.
you crying was an inconvenience to them because in their mind it's like, what the fuck you have to cry about? But it's because they did not have the capacity to
Yeah.
be there for you emotionally.
Yeah.
So yeah, our parents are very good examples of emotionally unavailable people. So the first question I have for you now that I've done that whole rundown,
And thank you for that.
how would you describe yourself? As emotionally available or emotionally unavailable?
I will describe myself as recently emotionally available, like newly emotionally available. Yes.
Yeah,
This is
that's
very new for me.
honestly same. I I think that I have gone through phases of
Mm,
emotional unavailability. I think
mm,
I've largely been emotionally available, or at least I thought I was. And then I went to therapy and I realized that because I was not truly in touch with my emotions,
mhm,
I really wasn't that emotionally available. Like I didn't have
mm.
a lot of capacity to take on other people's shit.
Yeah.
Like I think especially for friends, I was
Mhm,
largely emotionally unavailable. Like you cry in
mm.
front of me as a friend, I would be like in my head, like, Jesus Christ, please stop crying.
Really?
Yeah. And I've told you that. Like
Yeah, that's true. We talked about that before in
I
past
was
seasons. Yeah.
very uncomfortable with displays of emotion. I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know
Mm,
how to show up for a
mhm,
person because I wasn't in tune with my own emotions.
mm.
I've gone through phases. I
I
think
f-
now I'm
I think you're emotionally available. I so it's interesting because I feel like I used to be very emotionally available, but I was very young when I was emotionally available. And I was also raised by somebody who was very emotionally unavailable. So there was like a lot of confusion there. But I feel like I feel like I feel like there were places where I was emotionally available, but I don't think I was ever emotionally available to myself, if that
Mm,
makes sense.
yeah.
So I did have a lot. Actually, I don't think I really had boundaries because I feel like I had a lot of capacity for other people's emotions. So much so that I absorbed a lot of people's emotions. I would prioritize people's like feelings and them getting better and, all this shit. But I do know that like when I get hurt or whatever, I tend to like shut down
Mm,
or at least I used to. And so that really contributed to me being emotionally unavailable. Yeah, that's the best way I know how to describe it.
mm,
And so then I went through a period of not realizing that I was emotionally unavailable. Because what would happen is it would be like a bit of like if I felt scorned, then I would retreat and then I would become super emotionally unavailable. And then I would have to realize based on the things that people say to me, like, oh, I need to fix this. Like one thing that a lot of my exes, well, I say not like I have a heap of exes, but when I think about if I could at least name three different men who have told me that I run away when things get difficult. And to that, I've always said, so why are you making things difficult?
mm.
But that's like, and so it's like, okay, Deidre, are they making things difficult or are you really running away when things get difficult? You
I
know?
mean, I'm glad that you did some introspection on it.
Yeah.
I've been told that too, but it was at the point where I had decided I wasn't going to take any more bullshit.
And
And the response was you running away when things get difficult. And I was like, Papa,
and
difficulty is conflict.
yeah.
Difficulty is not you busting my chest.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
And of those three men who felt that way, I think only one person was valid in saying that. To this
Mm,
day, two out of three of them really were like putting me through hell and just felt like I should like two out of three of them was really in these streets playing with my face, playing in my face, and felt like I should have been able to tolerate more.
yeah.
I had already put up with so much, and I had finally gotten to the point where I'm like, yo, this is not for me. Like I
And
got
for them it was like a cop out. See, but
yeah, for them it was a couple. But then
that's not emotional
yeah,
unavailability.
but the one person who I truly was emotionally unavailable to, and I feel bad again, it always goes back to like timing. Him and I just were not like the timing just wasn't right because this was the
Hmm.
first person that I dated seriously since me and Dylan's dad had broken up.
Hmm.
And so, and I was very clear with him that I wasn't ready for a relationship. I think he thought that I would even, I think he thought that he could change my mind. Obviously, he could not. But I remember him saying that to me, and I was thinking, what you mean I run away when things get difficult? But for me, and this is a hill I'll die on, I felt like because we were not in a serious relationship, I shouldn't want to, I didn't feel like the relationship warranted like that level of endurance, if that makes sense. I'm like, you're not my boyfriend. So no, I don't have to stick around when things get difficult. I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for a good time. You know what I mean? But he was
And at least you were
warranted.
honest.
I was honest with it, but the reason why I felt like he was warranted in it was because it's not like that man was putting me through hell. It
Mm.
was just the minute he started having questions, he was very much a what are we as, you know what? Like it was like, hey, where's this? And he wasn't putting pressure on me. But the minute he started asking me questions that made me feel like he was insecure, like, oh, are you talking to other people? And I'm like,
Okay, bye.
no, but when I am talking to other people, I'll let you know, you know, that like we could also just stop seeing each other. But regardless, the point is, I there was a point where I was very emotionally unavailable, and I had to
Yeah.
learn in that process that I was. And now I feel like I am emotionally available.
I think an important point you bring up though, because I don't want it to seem like emotionally unavailable people are bad people necessarily. Like
Oh no, not at all.
emotional unavailability isn't because you don't give a fuck and like you just want to hurt people. I think emotional unavailability can be the result of trauma. It can be the result of it just not being the right time in your life for
Mm-hmm.
it. Like it could be a number of things could cause that emotional unavailability. I think it's just important to be able to clock it in yourself
Yes.
and not continuously enter situations where you are going to push somebody else through the ringer essentially
Yes.
because you emotionally unavailable and they are seeking availability essentially.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. That's where it's like a fine line between seeming like you playing in people's face and genuinely just being emotionally unavailable. And a lot of times, the most emotionally unavailable people don't even know it. They really think that they have something to offer a relationship and they actually have nothing. Like, I think it actually takes a certain level of, you know what, maybe not emotional availability, but at the very least, emotional intelligence to be transparent and say, you know what? I really like you, but I'm not looking for something serious right now. Right
Yeah.
now, here's the thing, it's up to the recipient of that information to set a boundary for themselves. Because for me, if I know I want a serious relationship and there's a guy that I really like and we're on date like two, and he's like, yo, D, I really like you. I'm just not ready for a serious relationship. It's not my business nor my place to try to change his mind,
Yep.
to try to, no, I have to take that information and do with it what I will. So I'm either going to keep dating him casually and also date other people, right? Or I'm going to say, you know what? Love that for you. I'm glad you shared that with me. We're not a good fit and move on, right? That's where I feel like a lot of people get, I'm trying to avoid that attachment style beef because, you know, a
No,
lot of
but
people,
it is going to come up because a lot of
yeah.
emotionally unavailable people's attachment style shows up as avoidant. And then
And
the opposite of that
yeah.
is the anxious
So
attachment
the
style.
only thing that would make a person wrong in that sense, right? The person who is unavailable is if they never share with you that they are not ready for something serious. If they've never taken the time to tell you that they want to be clear about what they want, then yeah,
Mm.
it's misleading. But if they've made it abundantly clear, I am not ready for a serious relationship. And a lot of the time they do, believe it or not. A lot of the time they do. And some people never disclose to the people that they vented and crying to that they said, oh, I'm not ready for nothing, for anything serious. But what happens is you get people who what? Try to change their minds.
Yep.
Also, sometimes you have to have the discernment to let people's actions speak for them. If
Period.
if somebody is not, if they haven't blatantly said, I'm not ready for something serious, but they're also not acting like somebody who wants something serious, do not assume that y'all are a couple. Pay attention to their patterns. If they're only calling you at specific times, if they're only calling you, if they only want to just have a spur of the moment hang out as opposed to being intentional about planning, why would you assume that that's your partner?
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't do, because
And
you're breaking your own heart.
we talk about this in a breakup episode last week.
Last week.
Like, y'all, people who don't want to be with you, who don't want to be engaged with you emotionally, it's so obvious.
They
It's
make it
so
clear.
obvious.
They
It's
show
they're not
you.
bamboozling you or leading you astray, bitch. You are doing that to
You're
yourself.
doing it to yourself. I've never seen a situation where somebody who didn't want a relationship made it seem like they wanted a relationship.
And this is
Ever.
coming from somebody who literally has an ex who we all refer to as Mr. Big. That was 10 years of my fucking life. Like,
Wait, it
looking
was
back,
10 years?
10 years on and off.
Girl.
Yeah. Looking back, I am fully conscious of the fact that the proof was there. The
Yeah.
red flags, them bitches were just in my
They
face. And I
were
was like, this is so cute. I need you to move out of my way because I can save him. Like,
that I can save him.
and he was very much emotionally unavailable. And he had
Yeah.
his reasons. Like, he's not an evil person, but he was not prepared to be who I wanted him to be. I wasn't trying to hear that fuck.
Mm.
And that was my fault. Well, it was
Yeah.
his fault for not telling the truth either. But still, regardless, I kind of want to shift us a little bit because I think sometimes conversations like this can become very relationship heavy.
Yeah.
But for me, even though yes, I've been in romantic situations with emotionally unavailable people, and I have had that for myself. For me, the emotional unavailability shows up in my life the most with my family. I have two
Mm.
very emotionally unavailable parents.
Mm.
And the reason I have chosen so far not to have children is because I recognize that when it comes to kids, I would be very emotionally unavailable. I
Oh.
am not at a place in my life where I know that I would have like the emotional intelligence to really parent a child in the best way.
Yeah.
So I've chosen to, clink clink lock that down, essentially.
That's
Um,
so very respectable and admirable because I
yeah,
feel like a lot of people have not been that intentional. And
yeah.
I just want to tell you, I think that's dope.
Yeah, like I recognize what it is as a child to be treated like an inconvenience and to
Oh.
have an awareness that
Mhm.
you are like a hindrance on your parents' lives.
Mm.
And I don't want that for kids. Like
Yeah.
I actually love kids to the point where I don't want one
You don't want, yeah.
because I want kids to have really good childhoods. I want them to be raised
Yeah.
by people who could give them everything. And I know I can't. I know I
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
Because my cat, when I tired of his ass, I'll fling you out the room and nothing will happen. I don't break his heart. He's fine. He'll come back the next day and be like, hey, mom, a kid, they
Oh,
would be scarred for life.
scarred for life. Scarred for life. You know, even like last night, I started to pick up that Dylan has some anxious tendencies. He apologizes a lot, and I initiated a conversation about it because whenever he apologizes, especially when he hasn't done anything wrong, I'm like, "Hey, you haven't done anything wrong. No need to apologize." But then I started to notice there's like a pattern, and I noticed like usually when he apologizes, it's because of something that I've critiqued him on, right? Like what, like I think the most recent time was he like had his robe just chilling on the floor in a room, and I was like, "Hey, put your robe away." He's like, "Oh, sorry." And I appreciate that he apologized, but I'm like, that's what made me realize, like, oh, he's apologizing a lot. So I asked him, like, hey, like, why do you apologize so much? And he's like, I don't know. And then I had to kind of ask questions that made more sense. And I'm like, do you feel like you get in trouble a lot? And he was like, yeah. The reality is that little motherfucker does not get in trouble a lot. But from his perspective, he feels like he does. And that's okay. And then I had to say, hey, maybe I'm hypercritical. Like maybe I'm always on top of him about stuff, right? And naturally the things that I tend to be on top of him about, it's really more so just like me making sure that he's aware of his surroundings, making sure he's not the fucking dude who's gonna be leaving his dirty clothes right next to the hamper and treating a, I just, so in a child's mind, it's overbearing, right? So right now, yeah, he might feel like he's in trouble. So I had to kind of like reassure him, like, hey, whenever I give you that feedback, it's not that you're in trouble. It's not that I'm mad. It's just something that you probably aren't thinking about. So you don't have to apologize. I'm not upset. But I had to take that moment to just kind of factor in his feelings and just accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was like, I'm not going to sit here and tell him, oh, you overreacted or anything like that. I'm just going to validate his feelings and be like, you know what? I could see why you feel like you're in trouble. I'm sorry for making you feel that way. This is what it is from my end when this is what I'm doing. But my mother,
Yeah.
so I probably would have just get cussed for even saying that.
That's what I'm saying. Like the process you go through in your mind just to make sure that like you understand why your child is doing or saying something is something that our parents
Never did. And the
They
reality
were like,
is,
girl, fuck you. Essentially, that's what it
no,
was like,
very
fuck
much. It
you.
would have very much been that. But the reality is I only have the capacity to do that because he's my only child. And that's why he's my only child. And that's why the likelihood of me having another child is slim to none
That's
because
fair.
yeah, I wouldn't have the bandwidth to do that if I had more than one child, right?
That's
And
fair.
yeah, and the only reason why I'm able to do that also is because I don't know about y'all, but I can remember the feelings I had as a child. Like you
Mhm.
said, I can remember when I felt like an inconvenience. I can remember what it felt like when my mom would shout at me. I do not shout at Dylan. Sometimes I get like frustrated, but I don't shout at him. I don't call him out his name. Like, even if he's in trouble, I'm not gonna be berating my child because I remember how that shit used to feel. Right now, I could feel the way I used to feel in my chest as a child when my mom would scream at me. I'm not doing that to
Yeah.
that little. I'm not. I'm not.
Yeah.
Um.
I wasn't berated. I mean, my mother used to flip the fuck out, but it wasn't on some like every day she flip. Like we used to get cussed. For her, it was the emotional shutdown. It was the you piss me off. I like
Oh
closing up
wow.
shop. I ain't talking to I like silent treatment type shit. That
Mm,
and I curious as far as like how that showed up for you as an adult as
mm,
a response to that because for me it made me a very anxious person
mm.
who
Yeah.
if I say something to somebody, if I assert a boundary, if I feel like I piss somebody off and I don't hear back from them, I
Mm.
don't
You get
spiral
nervous. Oh
because
God.
in my head I'm like this person vexing me there because my mom would not take the time to say I'm upset or this is why you guys have upset me or like there was no explanation. It was just and it's because she was not emotionally available enough to go through the process of like having those conversations with us.
Mm-hmm.
And to give her credit, like you said, oh yeah, my mother had 4 children.
Oof.
All four are we? You know what? Minus probably Z. Z is like the most chill out of all the
There's
kids,
a literal
right?
angel. Like,
She's
like
the she really is the most chill. Z wasn't really like what like outbursts like whiling. I think
mm-hmm.
like my mother
Mm.
other kids, even though Z has like her own life and her own emotions as well, but still that's aside. My mother had 4 children, and all of we had our own needs, and all of we
Mm.
had emotions, and all of we like I would be in there like somebody come get these fucking children, please. So I get it, but nonetheless, it still
You
impacted
still
me.
have a
So it is what
responsibility.
it is
Yeah,
what it
at the
is.
end of the day, whether you got one or 10 kids, you have a responsibility to those children. And and that's why I'm just like, yeah, a lot of the time they did the best they could with what they had, but their best just wasn't good enough. Just is what it is. My mom was on the opposite end where she didn't shut down on us, but she exploded. And the thing was you never knew what my mom was gonna explode over. So because of that, we were on our fucking tiptoes, honey. Like, we never wanted because we knew what her wrath would look like. And when my mom started, she didn't stop. It would be the smallest thing and it would set her off, and she would spend the next couple hours just ranting and stomping around the house and screaming and cussing. And she would just go on this rant that was never ending. And what are you gonna do? You will sit your ass down and shut up and listen, right? She didn't hit us much. I think I could count on maybe one hand how many times I got hit in my life, but I
Even
get
the
cussed a lot.
ranting and the cost, like that's
It's a
nobody
lot and it's
to
very
be in their
violent.
own home,
Mm-hmm.
getting cussed out all day, getting
Yeah,
yelled at all
and
day.
it's like an all day thing. It's so, and let me tell you, like she, I'm at a point where at this point it's like I don't care. You know how like they kind of raise we to not talk family business and all that fuck. I don't give a fuck about that kind of shit no more, right?
It's too late for that.
It's too fucking late for that. But for me, it's just like it is what it is. I thought that shit was normal until I had more access to my peers, right? I thought that shit was normal until people are like, "Ooh, damn, your mother to talk to you like that." Like, but then even as I went into adulthood, I chose my first serious adult relationship, and he used to talk to me the same. He didn't used to like rant for hours, but that man used to like explode and get so mean. And again, I thought it was normal. Why? Because I came out of that environment as a child. But it took me having Dylan and seeing that little face and just being so in love with him to realize there's nothing normal about that shit. Cause the one thing I don't want to do ever is hurt that little boy feelings. And even when he gets big, and it'll get times, I don't know if y'all saw my story the other day. I was like, it'll get times that I just want to push him, like, boy, right? Because at the end of the day, he's a kid, and sometimes kids that just do dumb shit, and sometimes he does things that make me feel like he don't ever listen to me. But I would never put my hands on that child. I will never cuss that child. Like, I don't want him to feel hurt and it's a result of something that I've done. Me having that child is what make me be like, fuck all this shit, including you. You know, like, it just, even the last time when I made the decision to go no contact with my mom, it was again, and I'm a grown lady at this point, right? But we ended up, we wasn't even in an argument. She talked crazy to me. I asserted a boundary, like, hey, please don't talk to me like that. She started going off, going on bad. And I'm just like, and I'm not arguing with her. I'm just kind of ignoring her. And I'm like, hey, all I'm asking is that you not talk to me like that. And then she tried to like she tried to be productive and have a conversation about it. And to this day, I don't understand people who think that it's productive to have conversations to dissect things when they're in such heightened states of emotion. That's just me. But I still participated in the conversation. But she wasn't getting what she wanted out of the conversation. So she was doing her thing, right? She's ranting, she cussing, she carrying on. And I'm sitting there and I'm realizing, wait, I'm a grown fucking woman. I don't have to put up with this. And I literally said just that. I didn't curse, but I said, I literally packed my bag. And this was a week before I was set to leave St. Croix, right? I'm so glad I was able to be in a position to change my flight. And I had literally, this was the last time me and my mom exchanged words. This was maybe 3 years. This summer will be 3 years since that happened. And she's doing what she always does, right? She's ranting, she's screaming, she's cussing, she's carrying on, all because I set a boundary. And I'm very respectfully, I might add. But I'm in the room. Dylan is laying there. Dylan is upset because Dylan's not used to that kind of shit. And I fling my stuff in my suitcase. I put something comfortable on Dylan. I came out the room to go put my stuff in the car. I said, when I was a child, I had to put up with this. I just realized I'm a grown woman and I don't have to put up with this. Have a good night. And I put my son's suitcase in the car. I grabbed my child, I hopped in the car. And this was the night before her birthday. I said, I hope you have a happy birthday.
Damn.
I jumped in the car and I fucking drove off and I have not spoken to her since. That's been maybe 3 years. This summer will be 3 years. No. Yeah. Just fucking no. Because I had to realize, like, even my own emotional unavailability, it came from that. Because of the way she'd carry on, I became the opposite. In my eyes, having any kind of negative emotion meant you act like that. And so whenever I would avoid things that could potentially cause me upset, or even when I do get upset, I would shut down because I didn't want to be that. And that's something I had to unpack in therapy, is the fact that I didn't know how to process my emotions, because the minute things would upset me, I would just avoid situations where I could end up being upset because I didn't want to risk lashing out the way my mom used to lash out. And that's not healthy either. So yeah.
I glad, because I think one day we definitely need to do an episode on going no contact with people.
Yeah.
We've done the breakup process. We've talked about our parents at length, but I think going no contact with somebody is a process that people don't talk about enough.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
think people think it's impossible, especially when it comes to parents. But
Yeah.
sometimes that's the healthiest thing that you could do for yourself, is to go no contact with somebody.
Absolutely.
And in terms of healing from being raised by an emotionally unavailable parent, it's funny. Every time I said I fuck this episode, I start counting.
Me too.
But distancing yourself from the emotionally unavailable person is like the number one thing that most people recommend, because you, as long as you are around that person, you either facing harm from how they display that behavior, or you constantly fighting for their attention, for their love. And for me, that's how it manifested itself in my life. Is I had these two parents who were good to their kids. They were not abusive by any means, but the thought that come into my mind is like, I spend my whole life kind of looking at my mother, like the back of her head, almost figuratively.
Yeah.
And my relationships, looking back, the history of my relationships were the same way. I spent a lot of my life in relationships with emotionally unavailable men who I was constantly missing, constantly waiting for them to text me back, constantly waiting for them to show up in the big way that I tend to show up in relationships. And it's essentially the same thing. Like, I learned that that's love. That's
Mm.
how that's love is that kind of like that kind of
Yeah, it's what
energy.
was familiar to
It's
you.
what was familiar. So I found myself constantly trying to prove to people that I
Mm-hmm.
was good enough for them to love me back. And
Mm,
then one day it just fucking clicked that I was like, I'm already good enough to be
exactly.
loved back. They just chose not to. So I'm going to stop trying.
I'm gonna stop
I'm
trying.
going to stop
Hello.
trying. And that's not to say I'm no contact with my mom. I still speak with my mom, but do I talk to my mother every day? No. I can't tell you the last time I called my mother. And it's not because of like I dislike her, I don't want to talk to her. It's just I feel like me constantly trying to maintain the relationship takes
Yeah.
a lot of energy on my part, and it
Yeah.
puts me back in the place of the young Heiza who were constantly trying to like
Yeah.
emotionally connect with her mother. So I just don't do so much of it anymore. But yeah, in terms of healing, so for those of you who listening who recognize that you are in relationships or dealing with family that's emotionally unavailable, there are ways to heal from it. There are ways to move forward. There are ways to stop yourself from continuing to engage
Yeah.
in those types of relationships.
Or you may be the person who's emotionally unavailable.
Exactly. Go to fucking therapy. That's probably number one is you therapy is one of the best ways to turn the mirror on yourself and
Mm-hmm.
realize like areas where you could be doing better to other people and also areas where people could be doing better to you. So that's always
Yeah.
my first suggestion. Inner child work, which we've talked about before.
Yes.
Um, because again, you might be emotionally unavailable or dealing with those people because of something that happened in your childhood. What's a recommendation that you have, Deidre?
Um, a good one. So especially if you don't have access to to therapy, because I recognize that a lot of people don't have access to therapy, right? It might be a thing where you don't have good insurance or your insurance is there, but the copay is crazy or whatever the case may be. Um, Go online. There's so many like free resources. Even if you do find all like I love a good personality test, right? So find like those quizzes and stuff, but find like reputable ones where you can learn things about yourself. Find whatever free resources you can to like do those quizzes and things, but also ask the people that you trust. Ask the people that you trust how you're impacting them. Like, how do they feel um, how do they feel you respond when something really heavy is going on? Or do they feel like seen by you, right? Like if you're trying to gauge whether or not you're emotionally available or not, find out from the people closest to you because they'll know. Do those like personality tests and all that jazz. Um, but also don't beat yourself up. If you're recognizing like, holy shit, I might actually really be emotionally unavailable and probably hurting the people close to me. If you don't want to be hurting the people close to you, then do what you need to do to kind of work through that, right? But then also try to get to the bottom of where it came from. It's most likely your parents. Most likely your parents or like some sort of a significant relationship, whatever adult raised you. Shit, it could even be your fucking teachers. Who knows? But then you just kind of unpack those things, try to figure out how you want to be impacting people. If you really don't want to be the person that's like breaking hearts and making people feel like you don't value them and all this jazz, then you need to kind of sit with yourself and ask, okay, how do I work through this, right? It might be a little uncomfortable. It's gonna take some time, right? Don't try to rush. It's not gonna be no overnight process. Be patient with yourself. Um, Set an intention to a good one might be to like purposefully ask people certain things, right? And really engage with those conversations. Also that inner child work is low-key kind of the best one of the best suggestions because doing that inner child work really helps because and honestly just like look in the mirror, like physically look in the mirror and really just visualize the little kid version of yourself and have a conversation with your inner child. I used to be laying in the bed crying my eyes out and I used to talk to myself like I was 5. Like I used to literally talk to the 5-year-old version of myself. Like all those kinds of things help me to get more in touch with my emotions and embrace them. So, you know, talk to I don't know if you have a pastor, talk to your pastor, but those motherfuckers be toxic sometimes. But I think the first step is to try to get people in on the process. Don't try to do shit like that by yourself, because the whole
Yeah.
point is to connect emotionally and be emotionally available, right? If you have siblings, do it with them. Baby, do it with your siblings, okay? But I always say, don't do anything you ain't ready to do. If
Yep.
you really don't give a fuck, don't do this. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Continue not giving a fuck, but leave
Leave
other people out of that shit.
leave people out of that shit. If earlier when Hey Isa was describing emotional unavailability and some of the things that came up were traits of yours, then at the very least that awareness is the first step. You're aware of it now. Now you need to take steps to not be playing in people's face. Be
Period.
fucking responsible. If you ain't ready for nothing serious, make sure you're telling people that, right? Because hey, if they're choosing to still stick around you, they putting themselves in that position, but you also just kind of be a responsible adult. If
Yeah.
you recognize that you're involved with somebody who wants more than you have to give, you might have to be the one to back off and say, you know what? I was in that position with the one guy who was valid and telling me that I don't run away when things get difficult. I had to be the one to end things because he legit
Would
would
I
have
kept
stuck.
going? Yeah.
I mean,
And
we
I
did
think
it
a
for two
lot of
years.
people, yeah, a lot of people are in those situations and
Mm-hmm.
they use the excuse of, well, I told you that I
Mm-hmm. But
wasn't ready for blah, 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 but you still around. You
you
still
still around, and
benefiting from
and
having
then at that
access to
point
them.
you are using that person, and if you're okay with using other people, then that's a character flaw. Because I had to realize, like, I was very clear with him, and even him, like the first time I tried to like break up with him, if you will, we weren't a couple, but the easiest language to use is that, right? The first time I tried to cut things off with him, it was because I think him and I had been seeing each other for about 6 months at that point. This was the first time one of those uncomfortable conversations came up where he hit me up because he heard that I didn't want to see him anymore. It was bullshit. That's another story for another day. But I had to, for me, it was very illogical and weird because one, I wasn't like uninterested in him. I actually liked him a lot. It was just a gossipy situation, basically. But long story short, I was like, hey, we need to stop seeing each other. And he was like, oh, I know you're not ready for a relationship. I'm not trying to pressure you, blase, blase. And I'm like, okay, fine.
If you know.
If
Anyway,
you know, but after a certain amount of time, I started to realize this man is ready for a relationship. I am not. As long as I'm here, he's gonna be here. I
mhm.
had to kind of get to the point where I'm like, okay, Deidre, you need to separate from this man because at this point you're wasting his time. This much time has gone by. You haven't changed your mind about not wanting a relationship, and he's waiting it out for you. You wasting this man time. So what did I do? I back off. And at the very least, do that. Don't be wasting people time because it's crazy and it's fucked up.
Yeah. With that being said, I hope that y'all take something from this episode. There are a lot of conversations happening online, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a therapist, I'm not a mental health professional, but a lot of, especially the relationship conversations that I see people having online, is just a bunch of emotionally stunted people
Yeah.
trying to apply all these weird dating rules when what y'all really need is therapy. You need to stop
Legit.
debating about how much you would pay for a date, and you need to pay to go see that lady.
Honestly, truly, if all the people who are in all these ridiculous conversations about how much they would pay or where they would just take that money and go talk to the lady,
Yeah.
I think things will be a
That's why
lot better.
that's why Good Up is never going to be the podcast that is constantly talking about dating and relationships.
Yeah,
It's always going to be about mental health
it's
because
so
I want
tired.
to go see that lady.
Have you been seeing all those discussions online about Love is Blind?
I have. I don't really watch the show,
I
but
haven't watched it
that's
since Lauren and
yeah.
Cam.
I've never really watched the show, but I've been seeing a lot of it, and that's where it's coming from is
Yeah.
constant conversations about dating and, oh, men need to do this and women need to do that. Both of you
Everybody
need
needs
to
to,
go
yeah.
call a lady.
Yeah. That
But
I
we do need to wrap up. Um because
Bye.
we have another episode to record. With that being said, thank you guys for listening. Shout out to all of our sponsors. You can find us on social media where you can find us. You're gonna hear the tag at the end of the episode. So We will see you right back here next week. I would like to hear y'all's stories about either
Yes.
people in your lives who are emotionally unavailable, whether you are emotionally unavailable,
Mm-hmm.
and how you navigate that.
Mm.
So DM us at Good Up
Yeah.
Pod.
Thank you. I like that. I'm looking forward to seeing the responses.
Yeah. All right. With that being said, Deidre, tell these beautiful ass people bye.
Bye.
The Good Up Podcast is sponsored by the Virgin Islands Lottery. This podcast is Virgin Islands hosted and produced by Deidre Ritter and Heiza Quinones Ivory. Follow us on all social media platforms at Good Up Pod. Join the VIP section over at patreon.com/gooduppodcast and get access to exclusive bonus content, or visit our website and read more about our episodes at goodupvi.com. This season of the Good Up Podcast is proud to be sponsored by Empath Psychological Services, The Blend Collective, and Greater Changes.